everyone, welcome to this video. So I'm here today with a book review. So I don't do these too often. I just try to do them once I've read a few books. But yeah, so I have 3 books today. 2 of them are actually plays. So we have An in Spectacles and A Streetcar Named Desire. Now I do actually work as a private tutor, so I'm often reading like classic books, stuff like that. So I think this could be interesting to see what I think about plays and sort of books on the GCSE and A-level literature specification. So there's 2 of those, and then the third one is not on any like specification. This is just a sort of kids book, and this is the name of this book is Secret. So I'm going to start with the book that I read longest ago, and this is this play here, so A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. So I was actually reading this with one of my A-level students. I hadn't read it or studied it myself before, so this was my first read of it. And it was pretty interesting. So to tell a little bit about the story, it's about a couple called Stella and Stanley, and then Stella's sister Blanche comes and visits them, and it's kind of just about the drama and everything that happens when she visits. Blanche isn't the most mentally stable person, and it just kind of brings up a lot of relationship problems, and there's a lot of themes in this such as gender, sexism, racism, classes, stuff like that. So if I had to rate this book, I would give it a 2.5 out of 5. So I thought it was good, but it wasn't really that good, and I probably wouldn't recommend it. So I can see in here the first production of this play was in 1949. So yeah, it's a sort of 1900s play, sort of post-World Wars. But yeah, I mean, it was okay. So I thought things that were good about it is it had a good character development. So I was really interested in all these characters. You've got Stanley, who's like very masculine, sort of man of the house. You've got Stella, who actually seems quite nice. And then you've got Blanche, who is quite, like I said, mentally unstable, and she's quite like very worried about her appearance, and she's very like upper class and stuff like that. So I think the way the characters kind of progress and how it kind of shows their faults and stuff is quite interesting. As I mentioned before, so the themes were pretty good, so I think it would be a good study book. So obviously if you're doing this for A-levels, I think it's a good choice. It's not necessarily a book I would want to just read for fun, but to study from, I think it would be pretty good, because you've got obviously quite prominent themes of sexism and gender in particular. So like I said, you have the very masculine sort of male character and his friends, and then the more very feminine ladies and kind of their roles and the expectations they had, particularly back then, and how things could have been quite sexist. I thought it did have some quite interesting action and like dramatic scenes. So, you know, there were some like fight scenes or arguments and stuff where quite intense things were going on. So obviously that would be, you know, very interesting to watch. So some of the main criticisms I also have with it is that the ending felt quite unsatisfactory. I mean, I think in a way it's kind of reflective of the time, because it feels like there's no comeuppance for certain characters, and it kind of feels like things aren't really resolved, but I think that's probably just showing kind of how things were back then. But there's a couple of things, like there was like a theme of paedophilia and also like abuse, and none of those things were resolved. So those people were not ever in trouble or punished for what they did, which I just found kind of annoying, because I wanted it to end differently. But you know, I can kind of see maybe why they left it like that, so it just reflects the time and how, you know, bad people can get away with certain things and stuff like that. But yeah, all in all, it was okay. So I wouldn't particularly recommend it, but I think it would be okay if you were studying this book. So the next one I read recently is, the name of this book is Secret, and this is by Pseudonymous Bosch, and this is a really fun kids book. So I think probably ages maybe 8, 9, 10 above would really enjoy this. So I read this when I was younger. I probably read this sort of early years of high school, and then I actually read it more recently at the age of 22. So I really enjoyed it both times actually. So I think it's really good for all ages. So to tell you a little bit about this, it's about a couple of friends. You have Cass and Max Ernest, and I think they're about 10, 11 years old or something. And Cass's grandfather's working sort of like antiques, and they get given stuff from like homes where people have moved out or people have died, and they get given this box which is from a magician, and this magician has kind of mysteriously died, and then it's kind of the adventure of the 2 children trying to find out what happened to the magician, and someone from their school goes missing, so they're trying to find him as well. So yeah, it's a really, really fun story. So I like the characters in it, they're very likeable. The settings are also really fun, because you have this fire station, which is where Cass lives, and then you have the spa where they go go to. So things are really well described and it's really interesting. The narration is also very unique. You've actually got stuff where the author is kind of directing to the reader. So he's really bigging up this idea of a secret and saying, oh, I really shouldn't be telling you this, I shouldn't be writing this book. So that's quite fun because it really feels like you're being addressed, which, you know, you don't get in many books. I'd say a couple of minor criticisms I have with it is that it's very descriptive towards the start, but I feel like the descriptions kind of die off towards the end. It almost feels maybe a little bit more rushed towards the end, so we're not getting as many descriptions and more just like action and dialogue. Another thing is the character of Max Ernest seems a little bit inconsistent. I think he's meant to be like very talkative and like never stops talking, but actually there's only a couple of scenes where he's very, very talkative, and then a lot of the time he just seems like normal. So I felt that was a little bit inconsistent. But on the positive side, I really love the villains. So you've got some typical villains in this story as well, which the characters end up, you know, coming across. And the villains are really fascinating, and I don't really want to give it away, but there's something about them which is almost a little bit supernatural, you could say, very unusual, and they're really, really interesting, quite scary actually. So I really enjoyed that. And the whole overall plot line of the villains, which is kind of one of the major plot lines, if not the major one, is really fascinating, sort of like their motivations and their aims and what they're doing. It's very creepy and very interesting. So similar to the last book, this story also had a little bit of an unsatisfactory ending. So it's all about, you know, this idea of a secret, and it's just a little bit left open at the end, and there's quite a lot of questions, and I think part of that is because this is a franchise. So there's actually 5 books in this series, which I have actually read all of them, so this was my, you know, first time revisiting them. So I think it's kind of one of those series where it's trying to make you read all of them, and in a way I feel like you probably should if you're getting into these. So if you were just reading the first one and you want it to be all wrapped up neatly, it's probably not going to feel like that. But I do really love this. It's a great adventure. I would give it a 4 out of 5, and I would definitely recommend it. It's just so much fun. I might potentially reread the other ones. They are all like quite big books, but I might reread the other ones and then sort of review those as well, because I think some of the other ones have even more like creative settings and adventures and stuff like that, and you've got these same sort of characters going all the way through, which is also really fun. So yeah, highly recommend. I really like this book. It's just a lot of fun. And then the last book that I read most recently is An Inspector Calls, and this is by J.B. Priestley, I think you pronounce it. So this is a play. It's ever so short. I read this with a couple of my younger students very recently. We only just finished it a few days ago, and I absolutely love this. So this is on the GCSE specification here in the UK, and I never studied it, I'd never read it, and I'm kind of annoyed that I never actually studied this. I did Of Mice and Men, Lord of the Flies, stuff like that. But I kind of wish I'd studied this because it's actually really enjoyable. So to tell you a bit about this one, this is about quite a high class family, and they're celebrating an engagement, and they're at a dinner party, and then they have this inspector who comes and knocks on the door, and he says there's been a suicide of a young lady, and he's there to ask them a few questions. And it kind of just goes from there, and it's really, really interesting. It's so unpredictable. I feel like when this inspector knocks at the door, you have a lot of expectations about why he's there, what's going to be revealed, but it kind of goes off in many different directions, and I couldn't really predict any of it, which I love because it's kind of a bit like a mystery as to what happened to this young lady and, you know, why she killed herself. This too, being a study book, has some very good and clear themes. Once again, you've got the themes of gender and sexism, and also classes, and like classism is a very prominent theme in this. It's kind of a lot about class and how we judge other people from upper and lower classes, which is really interesting. In the beginning bit, before the inspector even comes, you have this very interesting father character, and he's portrayed in a very sort of humorous, satirical way about how opinionated he is, but he's actually quite wrong often in his opinions. There's also hardly any characters in this, so you have the mother and the father, you have the daughter who is getting engaged, you have her fiance, and then you have the son also, which is obviously the engaged daughter's brother, and then you have the inspector. So, you know, not many characters are all in this, but they're all very well involved. All the characters are very much involved in the story, and it's just brilliant how it unravels. So I would definitely give this a 4 out of 5, possibly even a 4.5 out of 5. I would definitely recommend this. If you're studying this, that's amazing, but if you're not, I would still say this is really worth a read. I loved it. The ending is quite strange and almost a little bit confusing, but it's very much up to interpretation, and especially when reading it or studying it with students, I think it's really nice to get students to write a little bit, or write an essay about what they thought about the ending and their own interpretation of it. So it's quite fun that you can sort of take what you want from it in a way, and I think this would just be brilliant to watch. I really hope it comes to a theatre near me soon, because I would love to watch this as a play. So I'd say there was only really one main criticism I have with an Inspector Calls, and that's that it sometimes feels a little bit waffly. Sometimes it feels like there's just a lot of dialogue back and forth between the characters and you're not really getting anywhere, whereas I suppose I kind of just wanted to get to the point, get to the inspector asking the questions, stuff like that. And that happens more sort of in the middle and towards the end. In the beginning, not as much. So I suppose, it could be just to sort of build the suspense, to draw it out a little bit. But sometimes I just found it a little bit annoying how it's just going back and forth and the conversation wasn't really going anywhere. But yeah, I really want to see this as a play. I think it would definitely translate even better as a play. But yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I think the ending's pretty clever. Definitely just the way it presents the upper class and sort of how we affect other people and other themes like that, and how this young girl has died. It's all really, really cool. So yeah, I love this book. So that's all of them. So of course this is just my opinion, so you might absolutely hate a book, or you might absolutely love a book that I wasn't as keen on, and that's perfectly fine. We all enjoy different things, but let me know down in the comments what you thought. If you've read any of these, I would love to know, opinions, even if they're different from mine. That's always really interesting. But yeah, I'm hoping to definitely do more of these book reviews, because I do enjoy talking about them and hopefully striking up some conversation with other fellow readers. But yeah, so definitely I would recommend these two. I really like these two books, and probably this one's probably more universal for everybody. I feel would enjoy this. This is probably better more if you just enjoy like adventures and fun books. But yeah, definitely all of the books today had quite dark themes, like even this one being a sort of kids book, there was actually quite a lot of like dark stuff to it with the villains and stuff, so I do like books like that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Please give me a like if you enjoyed this or found it helpful. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more of what I do. I do all sorts of stuff on my channel, and I will try to do more book reviews in the future, so always stay tuned for those. But yeah, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I will see you all soon. Bye!